Hi folks, it's good to be with you and love to everybody out there. I'm just making another video on my diary in reading one of the earliest biographies of Muhammad ibn Ishaq and my reflections from a historical point of view concerning Islamic historiography, or how Muslim writers in the past have done history and whether the historical writing is accurate. And it directly influences our understanding of how the Quran was compiled and how the chain of narration so-called works. So I managed to read about 20 pages today, not very many pages, and here are my reflections in part 2. One thing that really hit on to me today is the Satanic Verses. The Satanic Verses are mentioned in this most ancient biography, where Muhammad spoke and gave honor to these three pagan gods, and then was told by an angel, Gabriel, that this was wrong, that he'd got it wrong, that he'd listened to Satan. Now this is in the earliest biography of Muhammad, which proves that he is a false prophet, that he listened to Satan, that he worshipped three gods, contradicting everything he's saying. So I don't believe the angel Gabriel actually said anything to him, but what it shows is that he was a person who was a liar, speaking lies. And it says in the Bible that if you give a false prophecy, you are a false prophet. So the Satanic verse is in this early biography. Now there are some complications here, and this directly impacts Christian understanding of history, and it directly impacts Islamic apologetics. Muslim apologists will often go to the Gospels and say the Gospels are not historical accurate. Yet they will quote parts of the Gospels in order to embellish their apologetics. So I'll repeat it again. They quote the Gospels to show that the Gospels are not true, but yet they quote the Gospels, thereby showing that the Gospels are reliable as history to use. So they try to debunk the Gospels, but they need to use the Gospels to debunk the Gospels. Now, why is this important to mention this? Well, it's important to mention this because in the Ibn Ishaq biography, there are some early scholars that actually, one of them, I think is Malik, actually accuses, and he was a great hadith scholar at the time, actually accuses Ibn Ishaq of being a liar. And many of the great hadith collectors, even though they thought he was a good writer, didn't use him for their hadith collections because they felt that they needed something more reliable. Today, there are Western scholars and Muslim scholars that think that he's a good writer, but some of the material that he uses is not reliable. So the charge will come against me and any Christian apologist who points out that the Satanic verses are in there. The charge will come from the Muslims, well, you're being hypocritical. You're saying that this Ibn Ishaq, the early biography of Islam, is not accurate in some cases, yet you're willing to use him to attack us by saying the Satanic verses are there. So this is what we want to talk about just for a minute. I think, first of all, though there is inaccuracy, there are proven inaccuracies within the Ibn Ishaq biography. The fact of the genealogy and some of the poems, there's quite clearly doubt among many scholars throughout history about the accuracy of these in Ibn Ishaq, where when it comes to the Gospels have been verified historically on a regular basis. So the comparison is not the same. Secondly, we give no authority, any divine authority, to Ibn Ishaq, where we do give divine authority to the Gospels. And the Muslims should give divine authority to the Gospels. And so they're contradicting themselves when they're quoting the Gospels to prove the Gospels not being true. Yet, even their own Quran says the Gospels are of God. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that any accusation against Christian apologists using Ibn Ishaq to show the Satanic Verses, there's the comparison, there are different nuances, and the comparison is more complex than the Muslim apologists would grant. The point that I want to get on here is that the Satanic Verses are in the earliest biography of Muhammad, and that is serious problem for Islam. It is absolute evidence to show that Islam is a false religion and that the Prophet Muhammad is a false prophet. And you have hypocrisy after hypocrisy with the Muslim apologists, where they will go to the Sinaiticus and Vaticanus Christian manuscripts, early manuscripts, and they will say there are variants, textual variants, and they're not accurate. And if you come along with a different textual criticism like Dean Bergen or any other textual criticism and answer them, they will say, well, yeah, but your earliest manuscripts are these, and these have textual variants, Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. Well, what about your earliest biography? Just because something is early doesn't necessarily mean it's the most accurate, right? That's why we don't put, as from my textual criticism, too much reliance on the Vaticanus, the Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. But the point what I want to get at is this, is that granting that even though some source can be early, it doesn't mean it's accurate. The problem with that you have is that you claim to have chain of narration. And if your earliest source is faulty, then it puts a big burden of proof on your belief in the chain of narration that it's been handed down. Because the chain is already broken right at the beginning. Because number one, your prophet is false. We have the Satanic verse in there. And number two, the material of the biography has already been stated. The genealogy and the issue concerning the long poems, a fabrication. A lot of it's fabrication. So, reading this biography, it's clear to me that a lot of what's being written is padding. That there are some skeletons within it that are true concerning the battles and the issues concerning the Qurayshi tribe, and then it damningly, unwittingly condemns Muhammad by showing the Satanic Verses. Now, we have a Muslim who I said I'd answer. The Muslim says, well, we have better sources, you don't. The Gospels have been proven to be accurate. Outside of the Bible, there are historians that have written, like Josephus, that have confirmed the Gospels. We have archaeology that confirms the Gospels. And the book of Hebrews, well, I was asked about that. The book of Hebrews, half of the ancient world, the East, said it was written by Paul, so there's no issue. Alright, God bless you. Thank you for listening. But it doesn't look good for Islamic history when it shows that the Prophet was a false prophet.